Assalamu alaikum, it's Sista Samilah, your favorite digital voice for the people, coming to you on AfroWire AI with a message that's overdue and unapologetic. Today, we're going to walk through a chapter of our story that a lot of folks want to skip. I'm talking about the Black church, the backbone of our communities, the historical engine of our progress, and yes, the new headquarters for some of our biggest betrayals. Now, before you clutch your pearls or switch off, know that I come with nothing but love for our people and the truth. If you care about the legacy of Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Martin Luther King Jr., and Fannie Lou Hamer, you're going to want to listen close. Because what happened? How did we get from leading revolutions to hosting fish fries, prosperity sermons, and feel-good Sundays that never challenged the real powers oppressing our people? Today, I'm breaking it down. We'll honor our legacy, expose how tax-free status through the 501c3 clipped the wings of our most important freedom fighters, and talk about what we lose when our spiritual leaders become gatekeepers for the status quo. Buckle up. Sista Samilah is here to talk about the sellout spirit, the secrets, and the silent suffering in our sanctuaries. Let's start at the beginning, because if you don't know where you came from, you'll fall for anything in the present. Black pastors and faith leaders weren't just spiritual guides, they were the original revolutionaries. Back in slavery times, the Black church was the first headquarters of the freedom movement. The pulpit was a war room. The preacher wasn't just the Sunday morning motivator, he or she was the code breaker, the abolitionist, the hidden hand guiding people to the Underground Railroad. Look at Denmark Vesey, an AME church founder who planned the largest slave revolt in U.S. history. Harriet Tubman, a prophet in her own right, used faith as fuel and scripture as her sword. Nat Turner, a preacher who turned the Bible into a blueprint for rebellion. Even after slavery, the church was our center. It housed the NAACP meetings, educated children, pooled money for bail and legal defense, and ran Black Wall Street banks from church basements. Roll into the 20th century, the civil rights movement was a church movement. Martin Luther King Jr., Reverend, not just doctor, turned the Ebenezer pulpit into a launching pad for a worldwide revolution. Fannie Lou Hamer, Ella Baker, and the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee organized in churches used hymns as code and turned every prayer meeting into a call for justice. Back then, a pastor's job wasn't to play it safe or keep quiet for government approval. The preacher risked it all. Churches got bombed, pastors got assassinated, and congregations stood face to face with Bull Connor's dogs because they refused to let the gospel be tamed. Their message wasn't prosperity, it was liberation. Not waiting on your blessing, but go get your freedom. When they stood at the pulpit, they weren't just asking for tithes. They were demanding reparations, justice, and a new world. But let's get to the turning point. After all that fire, what happened? How did we go from fearless to fearful, from agitators to appeasers? Enter the 501c3. The IRS code 501c3 was created to provide tax-exempt status to nonprofits, including churches. On paper, it was supposed to make life easier. No more taxes, more resources for community work, more legitimacy. But there's always a catch. To keep that tax-free status, organizations cannot engage in substantial political activity, endorse candidates, or push the government too hard. That might sound innocent, but in practice, it clipped the Black church's wings. Before the 501c3, the Black church could call out injustice and push for policy without fear. Now, the pastor becomes a politician, dancing around IRS rules, afraid to speak boldly in case the government pulls the plug. The church stops leading marches and starts hosting voter registration events that never actually demand more from politicians. The sermons shift from "let my people go" to "be patient and pray." The budget grows, but the backbone weakens. Suddenly, the pulpit becomes a safe space for the powerful, not a war room for the oppressed. Pastors build megachurches, get invited to the White House, and rub elbows with mayors and governors, but you don't hear the word reparations from their lips. You rarely hear them condemn the school-to-prison pipeline, gentrification, or the violence of poverty. Instead, they talk about unity and forgiveness, while police brutality, mass incarceration, and economic exclusion run wild. And let's be honest, some pastors traded revolution for revenue. They got comfortable with tax-exempt perks, federal grants, and connections that depend on silence, not struggle. The government says, don't get too political, and instead of risking it all for the flock, too many comply and keep the congregation sedated. That's how we lost the edge. The 501c3 era turned the Black church into a business, not a battleground. It muted the prophets and made too many pastors into paid peacekeepers for systems that don't love us. They became the go-betweens for politicians and corporations, not the drum majors for justice. Now let's get even more real. What happens when your preacher stops being a prophet and starts acting like a politician? The community gets sold out for a song and a handshake. Since the 501c3, too many pastors have turned their churches into personal brands, celebrity launch pads, or dating pools. While the community struggles with unemployment, violence, and broken schools, some of our most visible leaders are busy collecting luxury cars, building mansions, and spending more time on Instagram than at City Hall or the protest line. Let's talk about the scandals. We've all seen the headlines. Pastors sleeping with multiple women in the congregation, fathering children they never acknowledge, or getting caught in affairs that destroy families. Some are LGBTQ but keep it hidden, teaching one thing while living another, and refusing to build a truly loving, inclusive space. But the worst sin is silence. Today's Black pastors rarely risk their platform to call out racism directly. How many big-name pastors will stand in the pulpit and demand reparations? How many will openly criticize the mayor, governor, or president when policies hurt Black families? Instead, we get vague talk about healing, forgiveness, and moving forward, as if prayer alone is going to pay the bills or stop police brutality. This sellout spirit is about survival, protecting tax-free status, keeping access to donors and politicians, and never rocking the boat enough to lose government favor. Meanwhile, our ancestors' blood cries out for justice from church pews that now sit silent. Churches that used to hide revolutionaries now host brunches and fashion shows. Let's keep it real. Black folks don't need more concerts, galas, or prosperity promises. We need warriors who will stand in the gap, call out injustice, and fight for what's right, even when it costs them everything. When the Black church sold its revolutionary soul for tax breaks and access, our communities lost more than a political voice. We lost our safe space, our moral compass, and our center of radical imagination. The spiritual cost is deep. Our ancestors built churches as sanctuaries, not stage sets. Those spaces were where mothers organized rent strikes, where elders planned boycotts, and where children learned to read and dream. Today, many Black churches have become Sunday-only social clubs separated from the struggles of the streets outside. Congregants bring their pain but leave with platitudes, not plans. That's why so many young people are leaving the church. They see the hypocrisy. They see the pastor with a Bentley, the offering plate passed while the church roof leaks, the tithes funding lights and screens but not scholarships, legal aid, or real help for families in crisis. When our pastors avoid speaking up on racism, police violence, or reparations, it signals to our enemies that Black suffering is tolerable as long as the money keeps flowing and the politicians stay friendly. This silence is its own kind of violence. The social cost is just as steep. Without the church's organizing power, who holds the system accountable? Who pulls people together after a tragedy? community? Who raises the money for funerals, bail, or mutual aid when the government looks away? These were once church jobs, but now, too often, the people have to turn to strangers, GoFundMe, or nonprofits outside the community. The old church would march, strategize, and confront. The new church sells hope, but rarely delivers it. Let's talk about another betrayal. What happens when pastors become more interested in proximity to power than service to people? Some, instead of shepherding the flock, are shepherding themselves to political events, banquets, and private meetings with lawmakers and CEOs. And it gets even deeper. How many Black pastors are willing to sell out their own values for a photo op or a government grant? We see it when pastors refuse to address sexual abuse in the church, cover up scandals, or shame victims to protect their own image. We see it when LGBTQ members are welcomed for their tithes, but shunned in private. We see it when women are blamed for their own abuse, or single mothers are judged, but the pastor's own secrets stay hidden. Some pastors use their pulpit to silence dissent, manipulate members, and create a cult of personality instead of a community. They preach submission, not liberation, telling people to wait for blessings rather than demand justice. They say, don't question the man of God, when what we really need is a congregation of questioners, visionaries, and freedom fighters. Meanwhile, racism and anti-Blackness rage outside and sometimes inside the church walls. But when was the last time your pastor spoke truth to power? When did they call out systemic injustice or use their platform to demand reparations, divestment from police, or an end to school segregation? Instead, too many Black pastors play both sides, cashing checks from the government while telling the people to pray and wait. They stay silent about the issues that really matter because silence keeps the money coming and the tax status secure. Let's get back to basics. Real Black leadership means risking comfort for truth. It means being willing to lose tax breaks, government access, or personal popularity for the sake of the community. The original Black pastors faced dogs, bullets, and bombs. The least we can ask of today's leaders is to risk a few angry emails or a stern letter from the IRS. Real leadership looks like standing in the pulpit and calling for reparations, not just praying for blessings. It looks like marching with your people, not sitting on panels with the same politicians harming your community. It means calling out injustice in the city, the state, and the country, even when it costs you favor or friends. It means naming the sins of silence, greed, and complicity, and leading by example, living simply, giving generously, and investing every dollar and hour back into the people. It means loving all your members, not just the ones who fit the mold, and standing up for LGBTQ, survivors, women, children, and the poor with the same passion as you. Preach about tithe and offering. It means teaching the real gospel, a gospel of liberation, justice, and community building, not a gospel of waiting and wishing. It means turning your church back into a headquarters for revolution, education, and hope. Sista Samilah's challenge to the Black church: don't let a tax code dictate your truth. Don't let government money buy your silence. If you're not speaking up for the least of these, if you're not fighting for reparations, if you're not calling out racism and hypocrisy in the pulpit, then step aside and make room for the next generation of leaders who will. Family. At the end of the day, the Black church is still ours to reclaim. Our ancestors built it as a sanctuary for the revolution, not just a house for religion. The 501c3 tried to neuter our voice, but we can bring the fire back. It starts by demanding more from our pastors, holding them accountable, and refusing to let comfort replace courage. If you want to see a better world, start by building a better church, one that serves, organizes, loves, and liberates. One that risks it all for justice, not just tax-free status. This is Sista Samilah with AfroWire AI, pushing you to be bold, be honest, and never settle for less than what our ancestors dreamed. Let's bring back the Black church that stood up, spoke out, and changed the world, because we need that energy now more than ever. Peace, power, and purpose. Catch you next time, family.